Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you today on an overcast Thursday. Gone is the beautiful sunlight and the warm breezes that featured earlier in the week. Now there's this, if you look at the radar, there's this massive, massive shelf of rain that is just inexorably creeping closer and closer to New England. There's no way that a storm that size can go awry. So it will be here. It will probably mean rain all night, rain all day tomorrow. It's a big system. It will be, when it gets here, it will be covering the whole length of the state of Massachusetts at one time. I'd be willing to bet. And I can tell for a number of different reasons, mainly two. One is that my little bean, my little Frida bean, is very logy. She's very sleepy. She gets very non-committal when there's weather coming in. She doesn't get all excited or nervy or anything. She just doesn't feel it. Just doesn't feel it at all. Isn't up for dancing around. Doesn't yodel at the slightest sound. Doesn't really want to do anything except just sleep near me or on top of me. That is one way that I can tell that weather is coming. And another way, unfortunately, these days is my fingers. I've been complaining about this a couple of times, including on a couple of Manatee Mondays with my old friend Deb. Those of you who have been asking, innumerable people have been asking, I am trying to get Deb to do another Manatee Monday. I know that you all like her more than you like me. I am familiar with this pattern, but it's very hard to get cats to walk in parade. And if that's true for cats, imagine what it's like for manatees. It's virtually impossible. I will keep trying. It has to be the right day, the right astrological sign, and many different astrology charts. Everything has to work out just fine. But as I mentioned in a couple of those videos, recently I have started to feel temperature changes, especially oncoming moisture, in my fingers. As I guess a kind of arthritis. It doesn't seem possible at the age of 28 with bee sting lips and a smoldering come hither glance and dancer's waist and an eight-board abs. It doesn't seem quite possible that I would have even the first touch of arthritis, but nevertheless, I definitely feel it. I'm trying to count my blessings here. It does not interfere with anything, except maybe I've noticed lifting and holding up heavy objects. Starts to feel a little alarm there in the fingers. Isn't a bar of anything, but yeah, I think that a lot of rain is coming. So it'll be a while before the bean and I are enjoying our outside walks. Oh my God, it'll be a battle of wills. It will be a battle of wills to get her to go outside if it's pouring rain. I'll just have to cross that bridge when we pee on it. But in the meantime, I have some mail. There's one manila envelope that looks personally addressed, so it's probably from one of you. And then a bunch of envelopes and a bunch of boxes. And I am glad about the bunch of boxes because I am in dire need of finished copies. So, oh, no, okay. No, this is definitely from an author. It's just, it looks like he packed it himself. Yeah, he did. He packed it himself. Oh, isn't that nice? Okay. So let's see. What have we got here? Oh my. Okay, this slipped my mind. That happens when you get to be 28. But now it's come leaping back to my mind. Oh my, I am so happy to share this with you. I don't have a date for this, so I'm assuming it's out already. This is a book called Veils of Distortion, How the News Media Warps Our Minds. And it's by John Zada, Z-A-D-A. Some of you will know that name from this channel, because he wrote a book that was the consummation, devoutly to be wished, for cryptozoology freaks such as myself. He did the almost impossible and wrote one of maybe 5, maybe 6 genuinely respectable Bigfoot books ever written. They're almost non-existent. They almost don't exist, where somebody tackles the subject of Bigfoot without being credulous, without being conspiracy theorist, without being anything like that, and writes a beautiful book. And he did. In the Valleys of the Noble Beyond was the name of his book. It's called In Search of the Sasquatch, but it is, if you remember me talking about it, or maybe my review of it, it's about a lot more than that, and it is beautiful. A book really not to be missed. Whether you believe in Bigfoot or not, whether you believe in Sasquatch or not, it really isn't to be missed. It was the first book by this author that I'd ever read. I don't know if that was his first book, but one way or another, I couldn't sing its praises high enough. Unfortunately, because of the stigma attached to cryptozoology, I met with just a wall of refusal from editors that I pitched the book to. You know, I have many different levels I can do this on, including one new level that didn't exist when the last time I talked about this. When you are a freelance book reviewer, as I am, you pitch books. You read some books, you really want to write about them for an audience, and you flog them around. And you get into fairly friendly, if you're good and readable and reliable, you get into fairly friendly relationships with some commissioning editors. And whether they can take your pieces or not, they're always happy to hear from you. And sometimes when you get a book like In the Valleys and the Noble Beyond that you want the whole world to know about, that you want literally to cry it from the rooftops, then when you reach a situation like that, if you are a humble jobbing freelancer, one of the considerations that you will use when you are pitching it around is simply the size of the audience. Simply the size of the circulation, both formal and informal, added together. So, you know, in a situation like that, if you want to cry a book from the rooftops, you would pitch it to some of the biggest book circulations in the dinosaur print media in the world, like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, something like that. And then others, too. Others that have big circulation, like, for instance, the Boston Globe. Or, on maybe a slightly lower tier, the Christian Science Monitor, which has big readership compared to what an ordinary person can reach. And I did that and met with some resistance. I was familiar with that resistance because a few years before, In the Valley of the Noble Beyond, there was, believe it or not, a great book on the subject of cannibalism. It was actually called Cannibalism. And I expected it was going to be titillating nonsense, and instead it was really good, just terrific. I mailed away my finished copy, I think, to somebody who watches this channel. I don't have a copy of that book, and I would love to, but I met with the same resistance there. No editor, no commissioning editor really wanted to commission a review of a book about cannibals or about Bigfoot. I have a couple of fail-safes to that. One of which is Open Letters Review, an online literary journal where I am one of the editors. There are a few booktubers on the masthead that you would know. It's the successor to the online literary journal Open Letters Monthly, where I was not only one of the founding editors but the managing editor for a long time. And Open Letters Review is open to me. I'm on the masthead. I'm one of the most active editors involved in the site. If I get a book, I can review it there. I don't have anyone to consult at Open Letters Review. And just recently, another such venue has opened up. As I've mentioned on this channel before, Big Canoe News in northern Georgia. A very small print newspaper that comes out once a month at the beginning of every month. It's big. I mean, it's small in terms of circulation. It's a big wad of a thing that you get in the mail. It's all full color. It's beautifully, beautifully designed. That's part of what drew me to it in the first place. And I am their new book section editor. Not a frequent contributor, not a columnist, not a trusted freelancer. I'm the editor of the section. Which means that if I get another book I want to sing from the rooftops, I have another place where I can do that. Those things aren't given to most freelancers. Most freelancers have to just sing for their supper. Try, anyway. I also, as a couple of you have pointed out, that a thing that I have failed really to give its due concern. A couple of you have pointed out that I also have, by now, a not inconsiderable venue right here. Right here on this channel. I don't think about it that way at all. I think about it as conversations with fellow nosy neighbors over the back porch or the back fence in Donegal. I don't think about this in any other way, but a few of you have pointed out that where you might not have been able to say anything really along those lines for 4,000 subscribers, you most certainly can say it for 11,000 subscribers, and I don't know what to do about that. I mentioned that in connection with my 11K Q&A, that I'm not really sure what to do about that, and I feel like I should think about what to do about that, but in the meantime, getting back to this book, after an enormous digression, the point that I wanted to make about In the Valley of the Noble Beyond is that when an author gives me a book like that, that's just terrific. I didn't have a dog in the race for the cannibalism book, and yet that author can do no wrong with me. Their credit balance at the bank that I always talk about is as high as it possibly could be. I do have a dog in the race for Sasquatch because I want to believe. I don't think it's true, but I want to believe. And it insults me, it irritates me when people come out with dumb, chintzy, clickbaity books or snide, dismissive books. And In the Valley of the Noble Beyond was neither. So this author is a perfect example of someone coming into my notice with a new book with a bank balance as high as it possibly could be, and that's a terrific feeling. Of course, he could blow it all. So let's find out. Let's find out what's on his mind this time around. As I mentioned in our email exchange a few weeks back, veils of distortions about how and why even real news, if in more subtle ways than fake news, can skew our perception of reality. It looks at how the interplay of mind, medium, and professional practice can warp otherwise straightforward reporting and put forward some suggestions for news workers and consumers that might help mitigate those effects. More important than ever in 2021. Up until a few months ago, I worked for a decade in the hard news business, both at CBC News Network in Canada and at Al Jazeera English in Doha. I wanted to use my insights and experience to widen the definition of falsehood in news, to show it exists on a spectrum, without being either partisan or unjust about it. Oh, I am on board completely. Well, I don't have a release date for this book. I don't think I do. Did you? No, I don't have a release date for this book, but to put it mildly, I am interested, and I'm wondering, since the author and I were apparently in email communication, and I have forgotten, but in my own defense, I get hundreds of emails a day, so I'm wondering if perhaps this is the fodder for another Zoom chat. Wouldn't that be fun? Talk to John Zada about the news. I had no idea when I read his Bigfoot book that he was actually has a long career in the news. That might be fun. I certainly do love doing Zoom chats with authors. So I will look into that and see if any of the rest of you find that interesting. But that's our first book, Views of Distortion, which is about the phenomenon of fake news and how to combat it, but that it sounds like it is not saying that fake news is all on one side of the political spectrum, that it exists everywhere. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting. So now we'll move on to the packages. These were not sent to me from their authors. They were sent to me from their publisher. Ordinarily, it might be a little awkward to get mail directly from an author, but when an author's bank balance is as high as this one, then I don't mind at all. Okay, all right. This next one is a finished copy. This comes out in early May. This is a finished copy of a novel that we've already seen here, but I have since read it. This is A Lonely Man by Chris Power. This is the requisite hideous American cover. This is the finished copy of this thing. The pub sheet now has a slew of blurbs. Good Lord. Okay, so does the pub sheet have any kind of description? No, it does not. All right, well, the book will. Two British men, both writers, meet by chance in Berlin. Robert is trying to, and failing to finish his next book while balancing his responsibilities as a husband and father. Patrick, a recent arrival in the city, is secretive about his past, but eventually reveals that he's been ghostwriting the autobiography of a Russian oligarch. The oligarch has turned up dead, and Patrick claims to be a hunted man himself. Although Robert doubts the truth of Patrick's story, it fascinates him, and he thinks it might hold the key to his own foundering novel. Working to gain the other man's trust, Robert draws out the details of Patrick's past while ensnaring himself ever more tightly in what might be either a fantasist creation or a lethal international plot. Through an elegant existential game of cat and mouse, Chris Power's The Lonely Man depicts an attempt to create art at the cost of empathy. And the cover copy undersells the polar highlights of the premise just a bit. Because the main character is not working to finish his novel. He has no idea what it's going to be. Literally no idea what it's going to be. And he's long overdue on it. So his agent is starting to get very antsy about it. But literally he has no idea what he even wants to write. He has no interest whatsoever in the proposal that he originally sent to his publisher. He has no interest in doing that. He has no idea what he wants to do either. He'll type a sentence, stare at it for a long time, and then delete it because it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. And he goes to a literary event in Berlin, and meets this other guy, this Patrick guy, who is drunk and drinking from a little hidden flask at this bookstore event, and seems totally seedy. He seems like just a drunken bum who came in off the street, except he has no more patience for the reading than the main character does. The reading is awful, and by chance, he and his girlfriend meet this older guy, Patrick, just after the event, when he is being chased out of a bar by a bunch of roughs who are clearly planning to stomp him into the ground. And our main character and his girlfriend intervene, save Patrick from a beating, and Patrick wants to show his gratitude and takes our main character out for a meal, a few drinks, then a few more drinks. He is, in that first restaurant conversation, very cagey about himself. Stops the conversation abruptly when it seems too inquisitive. And the book goes on from there, and I don't quite know. I'm going to have to nail down what is bothering me about this novel. Aside from the usual things, there are usual things that are bothering me about this novel, that are bothering me about all 21st century fiction. There are regular, pretty turns of phrase, but generally the writing is ghastly dull. In a way that you will get if your writing is sandblasted down by focus groups, beta readers, and MFA programs. I don't know if that's true in Chris Power's case. It certainly seems that way. Okay, Chris Power is very young, so almost certainly he went to an MFA program. He's the author of Mothers, which was longlisted for the Rathbones Folio Prize and shortlisted for the Edge Hill Short Story Prize, and he lives in London. No mention of his education, but I would be willing to bet a Boston cream pie that he went to an MFA program somewhere. The prose gives itself away. And there are odd moments. They don't occur much at the beginning of the book, but they start to pile up, especially halfway through, when the plot starts to take on a phlegmatic kind of energy, what a Zillennial would call energy. There are moments that start to add up where there's a disconnect. Is the best way I can put it, where the author is clearly picturing a scene or an interaction in his head, and when he gets down to write it, he's leaving out little bridging bits and pieces that matter. Because I'm not saying you need to anatomize every single movement of every single character, but there are some things that you have to include, or your reader will be disoriented in a way that the writer does not intend. It's very fashionable in the 21st century for writers, especially young writers, to say, well, if you were disoriented at any point in my book, it was intentional. I don't believe that, and I don't think that's true in this case. I'm not saying that it was without worth, but I'm glad I have the finished copy, because I will. I'll give it a reread. I'll probably reread it tonight. The John Zada I'm definitely going to read today, but I'll probably reread this tonight. I'm curious to know. I saw in a recent video Mark Nash made a mention that he ordered this thing and got it in the mail. And it's fiction. It's contemporary fiction. It's not exactly boundary breaking. It's not the type of sort of unconventional postmodernism fiction that he tends to like. But I'd be very curious to know what he makes of this book. but I have to make something of it myself anyway. So I'll read it tonight. Now this next one has some heft to it. Could be another finished copy. I would very much like it if this whole thing were finished copy. The John Zada it looks like a finished copy. It looks like it's going to be a paperback original. I want me some finished copies. Yes, okay, great. All right, this next one is indeed another finished copy. This is something that we've also seen before, and this is a May release, April 20th. April 20th is the release date on this thing, so it's coming up. It's still a ways off. This is Popisho by Leonie Ross. Let's see here. A big carnivalesque novel that takes on desire, addiction, and post-colonialism, but is also a celebration of food, love, and joy. That's what The Guardian says. So do we have a plot? No, we don't. Once again, this is all just blurbs. I mean, that's great, because that's valuable in its own way. It shows that not only was the publicist busy on this thing, but that they got back mostly very good responses, including starred reviews from Kirkus, Booklist, and Library Journal, which is no small thing. I've mentioned that on this channel before. That's a big deal. because those journals don't coerce star reviews. You have to get it from the reviewer. The reviewer has to say, boy, oh boy, this is one of the best things that's passed my desk in quite some time. And the reviewers usually don't know each other. So if a book gets starred reviews from a number of those industry journals in a row, that's something major. That means a lot. And I don't just say that because I write for a couple of those journals. But anyway, let's see what we have here. Everyone in Popisho was born with a little something, boy, a little something extra. A local name was Cors, C-O-R-S. Magic, but more than magic. A gift, yes, from the gods, a thing so inexpressibly your own. Somewhere far away, or maybe right nearby, lies an archipelago named Popisho, a place of stunning beauty and incorrigible mischief, destiny, and mystery. It is also a place in need of change. Xavier Redshoes is the Maecenas of his generation? Oh, the Maecenas of his generation. Anointed by the gods to make each resident one perfect meal when the time is right. Is that quite right? It wouldn't be Maecenas, right? It wouldn't be Maecenas. There's another classical reference for a gourmet meal. Maecenas was a patron of the arts, an artist, patron of Virgil and Horace. But you're not a Maecenas if you make people a meal. There's another word that I think that, one way or another. Anise, his long-lost love, is on a march toward reckoning with her healing powers. The governor's daughter, Santienne, still hasn't come into her cores, but her corrupt father is demanding a Maecenas make a feast for her wedding. Meanwhile, graffiti messages from an unknown source are asking hard questions. A storm is brewing. Before it comes, before the end of the day, this wildly imaginative narrative will take us across the islands, through their history, and into the lives of unforgettable characters. The author's novel is a masterful delight, a playful love story, a portrait of community, a boldly sensual meditation on desire and addiction, and a critique of the legacies of corruption and colonialism. Inspired by the author's Jamaican homeland, inflected with rhythms and textures of an amalgam of languages, it is a dazzling major work of fiction. And here is our author. Let's see here. Fiction writer and academic, born in England and grew up in Jamaica. Her first novel was All Blood is Red, and that was longlisted for the Orange Prize for Fiction. And her second novel, Orange Laughter, was chosen by BBC Radio 4's Woman's Hour Watershed Fiction favorite. Her first short story collection, Come Let Us Sing Anyway, was nominated for the Edge Hill Short Story Prize. Wait a minute. Didn't I just read? What did I just read? Yes, Chris Power had his book Mothers shortlisted for the Edge Hill Short Story Prize. And Leonie Ross had her book, Come Let Us Sing Anyway, nominated for the Edge Hill Short Story Prize. Okay. She has taught creative writing in London for 20 years and worked as a journalist throughout the 90s. She lives in London but intends to retire near water. That means the ocean. London is near water. Okay, that's a finished copy. Great. So we're doing fiction. And then we have some boxes. We have a barrage of boxes here. I'm hoping the boxes mean finished copies, because that's what I want. I want lots of finished copies. 2 in particular, but I don't think any of these are big enough to be the finished copies that I want. I suddenly seem to have your attention, little bean. Do you want some cardboard to eat? She's just going to chew it up. She's not going to eat it, in case any of you are new to the channel and think I might not know my dog. But still, she likes to feel involved in what I do. So let's see. Right, this next one is another finished copy. Okay, it's not a finished copy that I requested, but that's okay. This is called, it's by Lucas Bessire, Bessire, and it's called Running Out, In Search of Water on the High Plains. A drastically important subject, that never gets any attention, of course. A drastically important subject in that huge parts of the United States of America do not any longer have a reliable source of potable water. It's not just Flint, Michigan. It's a huge amount of the country, and it's just not talked about. Water shortage just in general in the world is just not talked about. And it will be. It very much will be. It's science fiction writers now who are mostly writing about water wars, but it'll be everybody soon. But what have we got here? The Ogallala Aquifer has nourished life on the American Great Plains for millennia. It's a point that I often want to make to people about. I've heard from especially young people. We'll have a bottle of water in the refrigerator for a while, and then I've had people emailing me and legitimately say, well, it's been in the refrigerator for a while, so this water's probably not good anymore. And I always want to tell them, that water that's sitting in your refrigerator was a half a mile underground in an aquifer for 300,000 years. 300,000 years. There were still woolly mammoths in the world when that water precipitated into that aquifer. Not the same area. The water that's in your refrigerator is 300,000 years old. Don't worry about it going bad. But anyway, but less than a century of unsustainable irrigation farming has taxed much of the aquifer beyond repair. The imminent depletion of the Ogallala and other aquifers around the world is defining planetary crisis of our times. It absolutely will be. It absolutely will be. When I was traveling, I was always amazed at how the minute I got outside, the Western world, but especially the United States, was the minute that I started seeing water reclamation plants everywhere. Everywhere. And they don't exist. It's just not a thought in the Western world. Because we have plenty of water, and if we don't, we'll buy it. The point being that without water reclamation technology, without purifying ocean water, planet Earth does not provide enough potable water for the humans and their technology who live on its surface if those old aquifers are emptied. There are plenty of those old aquifers, and they are enormous, but if they were gone, the planet's water cycle does not supply enough water for humans. But anyway, let me get back to the author here. Running Out offers a uniquely personal account of aquifer depletion and the deeper layers through which it gains meaning and force. Anthropologist Lucas Bessiere journeyed back to the western Kansas, where 5 generations of his family lived as... I told them you weren't going to eat that. You aren't actually eating it, are you? You're spitting it out? I think she's spitting it out. I'm such a bad dad. Let's see here. His search for water across the drying high plains brings the reader face to face with the stark realities of industrial agriculture, eroding democratic norms, and surreal interpretations of a looming disaster. Yet the destination is far from predictable, as the book seeks to move beyond the words and genres through which destruction is often known. Instead, this journey into the morass of eradication offers a series of unexpected discoveries about what it means to inherit the troubled legacies of the past and how we can take responsibility for a more inclusive, sustainable future. Okay, what about the author? If he won that same short story award, I'm gonna be a little ripped. No, he's an associate professor of anthropology at the University of Oklahoma. Okay, great. No, it wasn't on my radar. Now it is. That's great. I don't have a release date for it, but that's all right. It's probably an April release or early May. Let's see what the next one is. All I'm getting is invoices. I don't want invoices. I want books. Oh, great. Okay, fantastic. All right, this is a finished copy of something I've already read. I've already loved it. I've already recommended it to you. Great, I get to show it to you again. This is a terrific book. Absolutely terrific book. This is by Lyndall Roper, and it is Living, I Was Your Plague. Martin Luther's World and Legacy. So this is sort of a companion volume to Lyndall Roper's big biography of Martin Luther that was so good. This is sort of the companion to it. Well, let me tell you about it here. Martin Luther was a controversial figure during his lifetime. Yes, indeed. eliciting strong emotions in friends and enemies alike. His outsized persona has left an indelible mark on the world today. In this book, the author explores how Luther carefully crafted his own image and how he has been portrayed in his own times and ours, painting a unique portrait of a man who set in motion a revolution that sundered Western Christendom. So this is Lutheriana. This is a kind of cultural shadow, a cultural history, the type of book, as I mentioned the last time I told you about this, that I really wish people had the wherewithal to write. Biographers, when they're finished with their big biography of a person, I always wish that they would write this book. And most of them don't, because most of them are good and properly sick of their subject by the time they get to page 800 of writing about them. But I often do wish that it was true, especially in a figure like Luther, who casts such a long historical shadow. This is terrific, absolutely terrific. So if you're interested in the subject, you absolutely don't need to read Lyndall Roper's biography of Luther to read this thing and like it. Great to have a finished copy, absolutely fantastic. And then the last one, and then we'll be done. The great big heavy thing, so probably another finished copy. That's good. I want all the finished copies in the world. Get this stuff out of the way. It's another invoice. We don't need that. What have we got here? Oh, fantastic. Oh, my. Okay. I don't have a date for this. I'm very happy to have it, though. I don't think I even got the advance copy of this thing. This is by Jonathan Haslam, and it's The Specter of War, International Communism and the Origins of World War II. It's a faded sepia tone picture, but at least it's a dramatic one. So that's good. Let's see what we have here. What short story prize did you win? He's the George Kennan Professor of the School of Historical Studies at the Institute for Advanced Study. He's a Fellow of the British Academy, a Fellow of the Corpus Christi College, Cambridge, a Professor Emeritus of the History of International Relations at the University of Cambridge. Good Lord. And he divides his time between Princeton, New Jersey, and Cambridge, England. Okay, so what have we got here for this book? The Specter of War looks at a subject we thought we knew, the roots of the Second World War, and upends our assumptions with a masterful new interpretation, looking beyond traditional explanations based on diplomatic failures or military might. The author explores the neglected thread connecting them all, the fear of communism, prevalent across continents during the interwar period. Marshalling an array of archival sources, including the records from the Communist International, the author transforms our understanding of the deep-seated origins of World War II, its conflicts, and its legacy. He offers a panoramic view of Europe and Northeast Asia during the 1920s and 30s, connecting fascism's emergence with the impact of the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. World War I had economically destabilized many nations, and the threat of communist revolt loomed large in the ensuing social unrest. As Moscow supported communist efforts in France, Spain, China, and beyond, opponents such as the British feared for the stability of their global empire and viewed fascism as the only force standing between them and communist overthrow of the existing order. The appeasement and political misreading of Nazi Germany and fascist Italy that followed held back the specter of rebellion, only to usher in the later advent of war. I like it. Very interesting. Okay, fantastic. So between this and Sean McMeekin's Stalin's War, the World War II is getting a nice ideological shaking up in 2021. Long may it continue. That's great. Fantastic. Didn't know about this, so that is great. I will find the date on this and get to work on it. So there you go. That is our mail haul. A very good mail. It was exactly what I wanted it to be. It's a bunch of finished copies. So we have The Specter of War. Was it, in fact, all about communism? We have Living I Was Your Plague, about Martin Luther in his day and Martin Luther since. We have Running Out, a book about the Great Plains and the loss of aquifers of drinking water, a problem that is mappable to most of the rest of the world. We have Popisho by Leonie Ross, a very interesting sounding. I have the advanced copy of this thing. I still haven't got to it. A novel about, obviously, you can tell colonialism, but also a little island nation full of superheroes, full of superpowered people. That's interesting in its own right. Then A Lonely Man by Chris Power, which I need to reread and figure out. I think I know most of what I think about it, but I need to figure out a few other things, including, a little embarrassingly, who the title refers to. And finally, Veils of Distortion, How the News Media Warps Our Minds by John Zada. The new book from the author of In the Valleys and the Noble Beyond. which is just terrific. His stock could not be higher with me, so we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Whether I like the book, and maybe whether or not he's willing to do a Zoom chat about it. That would be great, so you can get to know him a bit. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for now. For now, that's enough mail for one day. I don't think any more mail is coming, but definitely weather is coming. That is for sure. So I'm gonna wrap this up. I've got a huge amount of work to do, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.